Welcome to Decode Dune, an exegesis of the Dune universe.
Welcome to Decode Dune. We can ramble our way into the intro. It's our podcast. We do what we want. So we're at Decode Dune. I don't remember what episode we're on. I don't think it matters, but we are on 376 of our version of Dune.
Page 376.
Jeff, do you want to read the intro? Or do we want to dive in?
I do want to read the intro. Thank you. Here we go. My father, the Padishah Emperor, was 72, yet looked no more than 35 the year he encompassed the death of Duke Leto and gave Arrakis back to the Harkonnens. He seldom appeared in public wearing other than a Sardaukar uniform and a Burseg's black helmet with the imperial lion and gold upon its crest. The uniform was an open reminder of where his power lay. He was not always that blatant, though. When he wanted, he could radiate charm and sincerity, but I often wonder in these later days if anything about him was as it seemed. I think now he was a man fighting constantly to escape the bars of an invisible cage. You must remember that he was an emperor, fatherhead of a dynasty that reached back into the dimmest history. But we denied him a legal son. Was this not the most terrible defeat a ruler ever suffered? My mother obeyed her sister superiors where the Lady Jessica disobeyed. Which of them was the stronger? History already has answered. From In My Father's House by Princess Irulan. All right.
Padishah Emperor got cucked big time by the BGs.
Yep.
They were like, there's things about this I have questions about. Like, how does this work? Can you not get divorced? You get married, and is it that Princess Irulan knew because her and her mother conversated about the Bene Gesserit, where they were like, oh yeah, they told me I'm not allowed to have a son. So when we get to the point where we would do the gender reveal party and I find out I'm having a son, I have an abortion, or because of the Prana Bindu training, I know whether it's going to be, I can control it, blah, blah, blah. Cool. But so does the Padishah Emperor know that the Bene Gesserit commanded this? Is this like a Henry VIII situation where he was like, what the fuck is going on? Where I keep pumping loads into this woman and no sons are coming out and it's just girls and it's whatever. And did he know? Why couldn't he just have her taken away and divorced or whatever? Or was it because her Princess Irulan's mother and her, again, privately, where she was like, he's never going to have a son. Like this dynasty ends with him, at least in the genetic sense of the term.
Yeah. Those are good questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why. I don't exactly understand. Hopefully, I don't exactly understand why the emperor would comply with the Bene Gesserits.
Yeah,
it's not clear to me. So if there are listeners out there who feel like they understand this, it's similar to. I don't fully understand the relationship between, say, the Vatican and countries like France or Spain, or I don't fully understand that either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but it's there, right?
It's a thing. Yeah,
it's a thing. Yeah.
It's a thing. So we could jump to the end and then work our way back. This okay. And again, I mentioned this in our last episode. It will feel good to get past the point where the movie has ended, because in my opinion, the way media works is once you have like a big budget movie, that becomes sort of canon in a way where to some degree, like our audience, our numbers jumped when we did the movie reviews and stuff like that, right? Our numbers, people around that, I don't think it's just because of the time. I think it's the content. People were like, I want to hear a companion piece to the movie, not just hear this chapter by chapter. And then our regular audience is the book people. Where am I going with this? We're about to be at the end of this chapter where the movie ended, where Paul and Sweet Jameis have their knife fight. And in the end, it happens a little bit different in the movie than in the book, but at the end, that is where the movie ends. So I think it'll be good to get to that point, and then we'll be into fresh stuff that has not been in a movie yet. It will be happening in 2023, depending on exactly what all they cut and what they include. But anyway, so some interesting stuff happens in this chapter.
Have you noticed, by the way,
people
now that the Academy Awards are coming, people are like people who, whether they did or didn't do Dune content before, now there's a whole rash of like going neg on the movie.
I have not seen that. What are you seeing?
I just saw like a couple of different podcasts that are now highly critical of the movie, and that's their call to action is come look at this, come look at the reasons why this movie was actually bad, or
cool.
Whatever.
Do we know what their agenda is? Like what movie they think is better?
No, I think I think the agenda is it's like clickbait.
Oh,
come here why this is actually a bad movie.
Oh,
this is, and I don't know if they're serious Dune people or not. One regret I have about nerd culture becoming popular culture is there's a lot of people with opinions who I wouldn't say have earned their opinions, but if they can get mind space, or if they can put it out there, you can say whatever the fuck, and people will listen. So it's frustrating to me that we can't really have nice things in the Dune community because new and old Dune nerds just can't be satisfied. They can't enjoy whatever they're given. I think that includes us. We're sometimes very critical, but overall, like it was such a beautiful movie, and they're trying to tell a story, and it's gonna take time to get that story told because it's a fairly dense story. And so people who are all like, it was boring or whatever, maybe they just haven't engaged with the content enough to really see it. Are there flaws? Of course, and they're fun to talk about, but to like poop on the whole thing, that's a bummer.
I still stand by my comment that I might not necessarily be in the fandom.
which is okay.
I might be an agent provocateur co-hosting a podcast about it while not being in the fandom.
But that's like the most interesting thing you could say, right? Like it's much better to be like, because what a lot of people are like, I don't like this movie. But what may actually be true is that they don't really like the universe. Which is okay.
Although the chapters we're going to get into are after this are fire, right? I was really enjoying the next couple. So let's get on with it. So what happens in this chapter? Jessica's in the she's in, you remember they have Jessica had she fucked up Stilgar. There was they went back to they were in like a way station in between the siege and at a way station before getting to the siege because they needed to rest there, and then the idea was they're going to march all night and get to the siege, and Stilgar said our people are going to be consumed with their family all day tomorrow, so we need to rest, blah blah blah. So I think they're in the cave. Is this the siege or not? I don't think it matters. We could just put a pin in that for a second. But there's a conversation about someone's trying to like fuck with Paul. I have to be honest. I read this chapter about a month ago to prepare for our last recording session. I didn't reread it, but there's a thing Stilgar's saying. I think they're trying to fuck with them. Stilgar's shouting out, "They have my countenance," which is to say, all y'all Fremen, leave me alone. She's got 2 liter johns of water. That is an incredible amount of, that's like the kind of amount of wealth you get mugged over. Like that's like a Rolex. She's got a desert Rolex, and they're like, we're going to mug you on the subway for this shit. And she says, it's not just for me, it's for whomever would need it. Which is a big integrity move from Stilgar. Stilgar makes a comment like, did you know there are people who accidentally lost some of their water and are going to be in pretty bad shape by the end of this hike. And she's like, well, I'll share some of mine with them. And that's a big move. And then I could be missing some things, Jeff, you can fill in, but it happens pretty quickly that basically we do the thing where Jamis calls out Paul, right? He's been cantankerous and angry and like one of those guys that just, right from the start, you can tell he's looking for a fight, and you either got to stay away from him or you end up in that fight. But in their culture, when someone gets called out, it's it's an honor culture. And Paul's technically not yet part of the tribe, so he has to answer that call to join the tribe. So James calls Paul out. He's like, they're off. I could be paraphrasing. They're off-worlders. We should not be. There's something wrong with these people. We gotta do a whole thing, right? We gotta do a thing. Jessica talks about how she's lived through, or Paul has lived through the Gom Jabbar, as has she. That's a big move. I'm gonna be honest, I'm not as familiar with this chapter in detail as I am the more recent ones, because I read this a month ago. Let's just talk. They have a knife fight, and
hold on before they have to fight.
Yeah.
Part of what's happening is, so Stilgar is referring to Jessica as Sayadina.
Yeah.
Stilgar has basically accepted them in, and that's what Jamis is pissed about. I don't think he gives a fuck really about Paul or Jessica. I think he just hates that Stilgar is so willingly open to bringing them in. He's like, let's just take their water and move on.
Right.
Yeah. And so this is as much it's like a proxy challenge to Stilgar's authority here.
Sure.
Not a big one, but it is one, right? So I think that's just important to see that Jim has probably had pretensions to a higher level of leadership and makes a fucking huge tactical and strategic error here.
Yeah. Wait, who does? Jamis?
Jamis, yeah.
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 So
because if he imagine he'd won, it would have left Stilgar looking kind of dumb. And it would have made him a little more water wealthy, and he would have had a little clout. Because honestly, they could have killed them both and taken their water, and everyone would have been like, thumbs up, good job, let's go. So it was like, I think Jamis wasn't really ready for what he was overly confident in his ability to dispatch Paul, and maybe overly confident in his ability to challenge Stilgar.
Yeah, that too. So so they take off their still suits and they got their loincloths and they're ready to do a knife fight.
Got the party outfits on.
Yeah.
They are ready to do a heckin' knife fight.
And what can we say about this knife fight other than it went faster in the movie? We're going to keep referencing the movie at this point, in my opinion, because again, like I said, canonical. It went faster in the movie than I think it should have. They did show Paul slip a couple of the thrust attempts, right? In the movie, but it wasn't as clear in the book. It seems like it takes quite a bit longer. And you really get a chance to see that it appears Paul is stunting on Jamis, which actually he's terrified and very nervous about killing someone for the first time. But there's a thing with that.
Effective counter fighters probably have that look.
Yeah.
Right. I'm an ineffective counter fighter, but my jam is to counter mainly. Some people like to take the fight right to it, but that was not Paul, and especially not in this fight. So yeah, it could easily look like he's clowning when in fact he's scared and probably not ready to to stab a dude.
Yeah, and there's a moment where Jessica realized how it is unacceptable in this society to clown on people. Apparently, you should, if you're going to kill them, you should get to work and just do it. So this is not a good start to Paul's entrance into the society. Again, he's not actually clowning him, but the appearance that he is creating a cocky, it's not a good look within the culture of this group of people. And Jessica realizes that and does her darndest to make it very clear that he is not showing off, but in fact he is afraid. I would be interested in the thing where she goes up and scolds him and says, "How does it feel to be a killer?" I feel like there's a couple ways of reading that. Is it she is shaming him for doing the killing, or for taking so long, not in a stunting way, but in a like, you're not very good at fighting way? I mean, she does the whole thing where she realizes she needs to do that so other people, again, see that he is not intentionally stunting on Jameis. Does that make sense as a question?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Well, I think, yeah, I mean, my read on it is that she's just trying to really drive home the solemnity of the moment and the severity of what happened. Like, I don't think there's any version where Jessica wants Paul to feel like taking life should be easy or should be without consequence. Right. Should be a heavy consequence. And so I think that's what's happening there. Yeah. She's just reinforcing a set of values. He should feel bad. Everyone should feel bad that it happened. Mm-hmm. This is like, this is where honor fighting is really a problem. Like, dueling for your honor is really not a good use of it's not valuable. So it doesn't matter how you get into it, whether you're the person who slighted or you made the slight or whatever. Like, if you find yourself in a duel over something like my parking space or putting your fucking shopping cart away or whatever the fuck it is, both people have made it, regardless of the outcome, both people have made a pretty serious mistake. Yeah. And I think that's the issue there. Could Paul have avoided this fight? I don't know, but I think Jessica wants him to feel super shitty. Yeah. Because it is super shitty. Now I don't really know how else to go. Yeah.
Now is the terrible moment, she thought. He has killed a man in clear superiority of mind and muscle. He must not grow to enjoy such a victory. Yeah. There's also, Jessica stared at her son. Paul's eyes were bright. He breathed heavily, permitting the administrations to his body rather than helping him. Him against Jameis and not a mark on him, one of the men muttered. Again, so that person's like, this guy's a fucking showboat, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's super unrealistic for a knife fight to happen and there to be only one person's blood spilled. Right. Like, completely unrealistic.
Right. It must be done now. Which, yeah, it must be done now and swiftly, Jessica thought. She compressed ultimate scorn into her voice and manner and said, "Well, now, how does it feel to be a killer?" Paul stiffened as though he had been struck. He met his mother's cold glare and his face darkened with a rush of blood. Involuntarily, he glanced toward the place on the cavern floor where Jameis had lain. Stilgar pressed through to Jessica's side, returning from the cave depths where the body of Jameis had been taken. He spoke to Paul in a bitter, controlled tone. "When the time comes for you to call me out and try for my Berta, do not think you will play with me the way you played with Jameis." Right. Which I think that maybe I could be wrong, but somewhere in this chapter, Stilgar realized that Paul actually probably could, but he needs to kind of put that threat out there, just to posture a little bit, Yeah. So yeah, that's that. And now Paul is welcomed into the group, and that is where he so when you enter the Fremen society, you get a public name, and then you get a only known among the Fremen name, or is it just per Siege even? But so his within
Yeah,
the
I think you had a Siege name and
Yeah.
you have a public name.
and that is Usul, and his public name, which obviously becomes a war cry for Fremen and the Great Jihad and all of that stuff, is Muad'Dib, and that's the whole thing with that. We're running out of chapter here. The other chapters in my mind are kind of big. Do you have any comments to make about the rest of the chapter? I mean, Sayadina seems to be thrown out there quite a bit. Like she did the thing in the last chapter, and then apparently that is who she is.
Sturgar's like, you're in.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I actually think that was good pacing from Herbert's side. Like, I like this. So basically, I think Jamis dies here to establish that Paul can be a leader. I think this was a necessary rite of passage for him in order to go where he's going, from a story perspective and also just in the universe perspective. And I think it reinforces Stilgar's leadership here. So I think now they're fully in. They've in a very short amount of time, they've done basically the things that the Fremen need to see in order to accept them fully. It's the same that Jamis had to die, but now Paul has a new wife.
Yep. Did you say new life?
Wife.
Oh, wife. Oh, what's your face? Yeah.
Jamis's wife, because there's like she'll serve him coffee for the rest of his life or whatever. So, not a bad day's work.
I've been doing a lot of that. Well, I did it on your Instagram. I've been doing a lot of that where when people post jujitsu stuff and someone scores a takedown or a submission, I'm like, well, not only did you submit him, but now you get a night with his wife.
There you go.
Sort of a
prima nocta.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
anyway, there's Paul's got now more than he can bargain for, because he's got both a girlfriend and a wife and child, I think, because he killed this one guy.
Because Frank Herbert is a weird sex. Not even he gets weird sexually, but he doesn't even fuck what's her name, which is weird. Jessica. No, not Jessica. What's her name? Let's talk real quick about the movie. I watched A Marriage Story. I think that's what it was called, on HBO with Jessica Chastain, ironic naming, and Oscar Isaac, and they play a couple.
Yeah.
And I really am just like, I think they had to have filmed that right after or around the same time as Dune, because Oscar Isaac has the Dune, I'm sure for budgetary reasons. He had the Dune beard, and I'm sure it was like, I'm getting paid way less, and he's executive producing of Marriage Story anyway. So he's like, I'm gonna look how I want to look for this project that, I'm giving myself a couple million to do, as compared to the bosses are putting me in this bigger movie. Him and Jessica Chastain, I don't understand. With respect to Rebecca Ferguson, we've talked about her performance. I think you said it lacked strength in a lot of moments and showed a little bit more of the emotional vulnerability that probably wasn't necessary. If you have a chance to watch Marriage Story on HBO Max, I don't understand how Jessica Chastain, who's a redhead, was not Jessica. Maybe she was booked on something. I just don't understand how they weren't. After you watch them together, that's Leto and what's her name? I mean, it's a movie. It's a contemporary movie about a couple going through a divorce and blah blah blah. But like,
they just decided to like. I thought we talked about this in one of the other episodes. So the the decision in the movie seems to be just treat him like what's this fucking Game of Thrones? We're just going to kill him, Ned Stark. We're just going to kill him real quick. Not going to waste a lot of time. The purpose of this dude is just to die so we can move the story forward. And I think that decision then severs a whole big part of the storyline. So there are a lot of people complaining like they didn't have, these scenes weren't in the movie, blah, blah, blah. And that's because they just severed a lot of that. He just cut it right out.
Yeah.
So that's what I think about that. I think it doesn't matter how they got along or whatever, because they weren't going to really invest too much there. And in fact, they didn't. They just killed him. So
yeah.
If they were going to have the dinner scene and stuff, if they were going to pursue this part of the storyline where they're trying to deceive Jessica because they think she may be a traitor, that whole bananas part, then it would have been valid to kind of show their intimacy and connection in a deeper way. But since they decided to abandon all of that.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, even with Ned Stark, like.
Oh, I was going to say, I didn't want to correct you, but Ned Stark got, obviously because it's a season, he died in episode 9. He got quite a bit more screen time and quite a bit more time to establish he's bad at playing the Game of Thrones, but he obviously was like the honorable. I mean, he wasn't dumb. He just didn't play the game well, or he refused to play it, arguably. But yeah, they fleshed out his character way more than you can in a movie of that scope.
That's fair. Yeah. Okay.
But I agree with you.
Forgot about
I agree with you. In the long tail of Game of Thrones as a series, Ned disappeared very quickly. So I completely agree. Yeah. You know, pound for pound, it's the same.
But actually, you make a really good point. So why did they invest? So that's right. I kind of forgot about this. So they needed to keep him around because it was necessary. They needed to keep him around enough to establish his relationship. Like why would Caitlin there's elements here that needed to be present later, and so I guess I'm going to make the same argument, but I'm going to fix what I forgot, which is you're right, Ned Stark did hang out longer than I remember.
I mean, over the course of 8 seasons, it's pound for pound, it's about the same.
Yeah, I agree there, but I also agree they did spend a fair bit of time establishing the relationship between Ned and Caitlin, and that was important. Although those guys didn't care by the end of the thing, but anyway, it was important early to establish some aspects of the story's direction. Mm-hmm. If they had decided not to focus on any of those things, they could have just dispensed with him literally in the first episode. He could have got his head cut off right off the bat, and it probably still would have been as powerful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts there about Game of Thrones that I'll just drop real quick.
Yeah.
Because they invested all that energy in the two of them, but they probably should have invested a lot more energy in that little girl who ends up fucking leading most of the North.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I think I'm finally done with that franchise after after George R. R. Martin's recent comment about that book. The next book in the series isn't really the priority. Like that's because he said for for years and years it was, and now he's like, nah, which probably some people saw coming or whatever. But I think it's officially over. So.
Yeah, I'm definitely over it. I like what he did in Elden Ring. So I like some parts of his.
I'll watch the show that takes the Fire and Blood or whatever, the House of Dragons. I'm just convinced that his franchise of the universe is going to be a failure because the story it's not over, right? It hasn't properly ended, so I don't think people care enough. So all right, that's it for this episode, I think, right?
Yes.
Let's try to, because we have an hour and whatever, we must get through the next 2 chapters so I don't have to reread them. All right, so you know where to find us. You already found us. Bye.
Like and subscribe wherever you listen to this podcast, And to hear more readings, become a Patreon supporter at Patreon /Decode Podcast.